Have you ever had people come up to you and talk to you about specific songs that are important to them, and they tell you what they think it means to them, and in your head you're thinking, no, that's not what it is at all?
Not so much. You know, it depends. I have had a few people come up to me, and back in the early days of Pittersplatter, there were more than a few songs that were very political, and nowadays not so much. I don't give a fuck about politics much. I mean, I do, but I don't give a fuck enough about it to write music about it anymore. But I think there's some of those old throwbacks will come to, like, for example, for support shows for the Dawn of Carnage or Frozen, and they'd be like, oh, you know, fucking Necrotech, you know, I really see the message there. There is no political message in that song. These songs aren't written about fucking United States government. These songs are written about, you know, what I'm talking about, like magic and necromancy and things like that. It's because I'm talking about it. It's not a you know, the only thing that it's a metaphor for is for, I tell stories about bad shit I've been through in my life. I tell those stories by way of metaphor. And I make up these parables and these stories, and I make these soundscapes and these characters to kind of be the messengers there, you know, because I don't want to be so specific that people can't take those songs and apply them to their own situations. You know, I want people to be able to relate.
If Wormsplatter were to describe the person who wears his face, how would he describe that person?
Wormsplatter would probably have nothing but disdain for the person who wears the mask, because Wormsplatter is everything that Mike can't be, basically. And I kind of find myself anymore these days, I relate more to Wormsplatter than I do Mike. I think in a lot of ways Wormsplatter kind of made me a better person and brought me out of my shell more and stuff, and made me more of an asshole. You know, which isn't how you have to be these days to survive, unfortunately.
Do you feel it empowers him?
Yep, 100%, definitely.
What was it?
Wormsplatter's that is the part of you that says, well, the part of you that says it's not okay to say that, it's not okay to ask that question. Wormsplatter is the guy that says, no, fuck that. Ask that question, say those things. So,
what was it like for you the first time you put on the face?
It was awesome the first time I put on the face, because not only was it like, it was me finally becoming that nightmarish visage that I wanted to be the face of the music. That monstrous imagery that I couldn't get to before, but now I can. So it was awesome in that respect, and it was just also awesome in the superficial aspect of, this looks really fucking cool, you know?
Now, speaking of your reaction to it, do you remember what it was like the first time an audience saw it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the first time the audience saw it, of course, they had some questions about why did I change from just wearing grease paint and stuff to this, and I said, well, because this is who I have always been. I'm just now able to externalize it. You know, that's Wormsplatter is that devil that sits on the, you know, the left or the right or whichever hand you use to masturbate with. That's which side he sits on. But Wormsplatter is definitely that devil on your shoulder, and that was one of the best things about putting on the mask for the first time, is because I could finally, what I saw in my head could finally become manifest in reality, and all that.
Do you feel like as the earliest Pittersplatter offerings music-wise, do you feel that as it's evolved over the years, do you think Wormsplatter has done more of the writing than maybe that early stuff?
You know, Worm has always written most of the music, but I will say early on, you know, whenever you're a young musician, or it doesn't matter if you're an old person or a young person age-wise, if you're just starting out in music or just starting out with a specific project, you do get wrapped up in head counts, basically. You're out there and you're saying, oh, I've got a message and I want everybody to hear it, you know, and in that, you start to, especially if you get a fan following and people like what you do, you start to think, well, if I don't sound exactly like that on the next album, they'll go away. They won't like it anymore. So there, in the early days of Pittersplatter, there was that, and it actually made me pretty angry at the people who followed me, because I felt that I was putting in being put in a box of this, you know, early Pittersplatter was very noisy, very power noise. It was shit, really. And so that back then was like, you know, 80% Worm, you know, 20% me second guessing myself and writing what I thought these people that followed me wanted to hear. But nowadays, especially starting with, you know, especially over the last couple of albums, no, it's all Worm Splatter.
I know you've often said that you feel that Dawn of Carnage was Pittersplatter's first real album. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's because that album was the first one you felt the shackles were off?
That's it. You know, that very first Dawn of Carnage is the very first album where it was 100% me doing what the fuck I wanted to do and only doing what I wanted to do. And it was also, I think, the Dawn of Carnage, I think, was the birth of Pittersplatter, because in the early stages of Pittersplatter, I said, you know, this is just going to be an electronic project. It's not going to have ties to any specific genre. I'm just going to do what the fuck I want. And then growing from that, the very first few years, I found myself, it changed. I was trying to pander to a specific scene and pander to a specific genre. And I wrote 4 albums doing that, and then finally I took almost a 3-year break from writing music altogether. And I finally started working on Dawn of Carnage, and Dawn of Carnage was me saying, we're wiping the slate clean, we're going back to the basics, I'm going to do what the fuck I want to do, and that's all I'm going to do.